So yeah, my name is Gaston. I'm founder and CEO of Guide Central, and we'll go into what Guide Central is in a while. But let me tell you how I sort of started with App Store optimization, actually without even knowing what App Store optimization was or even what I was doing back in the day. So yeah, as James said, I came in to Google back in 2006. I was one of the first 5 employees in the Latin American operation of Buenos Aires. And so it was really great experience because it was sort of like a startup within the most successful tech company out there. But the interesting thing is that I got to do a lot of different things within Google, from support to account management to agency relations and many other things. And so all in all, I spent like the first 2 or 3 years of my career at Google looking at campaigns, helping customers sell more through AdWords and stuff like that. And as you know, like Google's main business is a keyword business, right? So they sell keywords at the end of the funnel, but they sell keywords in the end. So I had sort of incorporated most of these concepts, and I had access to a lot of tools, and I knew many of the best practices to find the right keywords to optimize our AdWords campaigns for our clients and make the most of their budgets. So then in 2010, I moved over to Ireland. I transferred internally within Google. And I met a Spanish guy who's now one of my best friends. And in 2010, mobile wasn't huge, but we could hear how some of the directors and VPs at Google started to talk a lot about mobile and how mobile was going to become mainstream and how Google's strategy would shift to mobile and so on and so forth. And without being technical, we thought that maybe we should start getting our hands dirty with mobile, and so we decided to do a mobile app for the 2010 World Cup in South Africa. So we brought in another person who's now my technical co-founder, and we did a very simple app for the World Cup where you could see the teams, the matches, and all that kind of things. So when we were ready to launch the app, this other person asked me to kind of take care of the marketing of the app. We didn't really have a budget, but sort of choose the keywords, the icon, and all that kind of things. So it was very obvious for me that I had to go back and do exactly the same that I used to do for every single one of my kind of AdWords customers. So I used a bunch of tools to come up with the best keywords, used Google Trends to understand what keywords were hot at the moment, went into Shutterstock and looked for a very nice, appealing icon, and so on and so forth. So long story short, we launched the app 1 week before the World Cup, so right when there's a huge peak in traffic and where people are sort of deciding what app they're going to use throughout the World Cup. And within 2 days, we were in the top 5 of all of the Spanish-speaking app stores globally. So not within the sports category, but across the entire app store. And 1 day before the World Cup, we actually sold that mobile application to Kia Motors, which was one of the main sponsors of the World Cup, and they wanted to have mobile presence, and they didn't at the time. So that's kind of the story of how I started doing App Store optimization. I really didn't know I was doing App Store optimization. Probably it wasn't even called App Store optimization back then. But it was mostly because I had all these concepts incorporated, and that's what App Store optimization is all about, trying to understand how you can stand out of the crowd and maximize your organic downloads through good positioning in the app stores. So why is App Store optimization important? Well, obviously because of discoverability. Roughly 60% of the people find their apps through searching the app stores. And to sort of finish up my story, after doing AdWords and so on, I moved on to the YouTube team, and I helped launch the YouTube Partner Program here in Europe, which essentially consists in helping content creators make money on YouTube. And what's the biggest problem out there in YouTube? Discoverability. So once again, when you go on YouTube, you can search. Most people search, but it's hard to pick up the really good content, and sometimes there's very bad content coming up top of the search results. So I had to master discoverability once again there with YouTube. And that's exactly what happens in the App Store. There's huge discoverability issues, and you have to crack discoverability to do well. Without further ado, I'll tell you a little bit about our story. And to tell you about our kind of App Store optimization story, I have to tell you a little bit about Guide Central, who we are, what we do, and why we had to pay attention to this. So we're basically a Dublin-based startup. We're 6 people. It's a mobile, and more specifically, iPhone app. And we aim to create a global community of makers. So that's people who share sort of DIY, home improvement, home decoration, arts, crafts, projects with other people and learn from each other. So we've raised a little bit over 600K to date. We launched a year ago. We started working on this maybe 16, 17 months ago. Yeah, I mean, being an iOS app at the moment, even though that's kind of the first step, we obviously needed a good presence in the App Store. And most importantly, and as usually happens, one of our main competitors is like a Silicon Valley, very, very well-funded startup with a lot of budget. And so we thought that since we didn't have the budget to do the same things that they can do, we had to find alternative ways to compete against them in the App Store. So essentially, this is what we thought. Effort is the route available for the underdog. We may not be able to outspend our competitors, but we can outwork them. And that's exactly the logic behind doing App Store optimization. Our results, from March to November this year, we increased our downloads, our organic downloads in the iOS App Store by 15. So without disclosing numbers, that would be going from 10 to 150 or from 100 to 1500. And that's only by applying App Store optimization techniques. So here you can see the graph of how our downloads evolved during that period of time. And as you can see, we had sort of 2 major breakthroughs. The first one, that's the first one. It doesn't look very, huge now, but it was huge at that point in time. And the second one is obviously the one towards the far end, which is something that we discovered recently. So all in all, it took us 17 updates to go through this entire process. So every single time we submit an update, I see that as an opportunity to learn, to test, to make mistakes, and to really understand how this thing works. And throughout those 17 updates, there were kind of 2 big step changes. The first one, the one I showed before, were changes around the title of the app, and the second one is around moving away from a US-centric approach to a more international approach, and therefore having a better ranking in multiple countries. So let's sort of analyze what we did with our App Store presence. So the App Store presence is composed by all these things here. So there's actually many things that you have to pay attention to when doing App Store optimization. Some of them are more important than others, but we'll cover all these throughout the presentation, and I'll tell you which ones are more important and why, as well as some tools and best practices for every single one of them. So let's start with the icon. So the icon, I put high there. The icon makes a big difference. It's really important. There's no way to effectively understand how much impact the icon has, but what we do know is that the icon is sort of the first impression that you give to users when they come across your app on the App Store. So first impressions are really important, and I think we all agree that Angelina is a very attractive person, but she doesn't look the same in this picture than this picture, right? There's a big difference. And the same applies to the app stores and the icons in particular. And this is part of our history and our evolution. When we started, we had this very ugly blue logo there, icon, which, as you see, it isn't great. The new one does a much, much better job. We always knew this was a bad icon, but we didn't want to spend a lot of time and resources around design. when we had still a lot of things to prove around the app functionality and what users really wanted. So we thought, okay, let's start with something basic. We know it's not good enough, but once we kind of crack what the app is all about and what sort of things we should be building within the app, then we'll go through a redesign process and improve it. And that's what we did. And we went from this icon to this other icon. But the process wasn't, I mean, there was a lot of sort of science and thought around the process. We gathered a lot of user feedback. We didn't do it ourselves. We worked with a professional agency that knows how to develop brand identities. And what we had in mind was that whatever the brand identity was, it had to have an impact in the App Store. So we did CTR tests. And so with the icon, what you're looking for is the highest possible CTR, CTR being click-through rate. Because when you are out there and there's, say, 20 or 30 apps or icons in a page, those with the highest CTR are the ones that get more clicks and therefore potentially more downloads. So you have to optimize for CTR. And you can do things such as running small test campaigns where you show different icons to different people and see which ones perform better. So all these things are part of the icon creation process. We also took in consideration the iOS 7 guidelines. We did this a few months before iOS 7 was launched, but we knew some things around iOS. So for instance, not sure if you can see there, but the icon goes from sort of like a pink to a purple, and that's very similar to the official App Store and iTunes icons within the App Store. So for instance, for social media, we only use pink, but for the App Store ecosystem, we use this kind of gradient from pink to purple because it fits better with iOS 7. And while we're still not sure, some of the kind of initial data suggests that just by changing the icon, we're getting between 10 and 20% more downloads. And at the end of the day, as I said, it's all about standing out of the crowd. And from this screenshot here, you could easily delete some of these apps that their icons don't do a great job in terms of calling your attention, and hopefully a few others do a better job. And so it's about causing a very good first impression and getting people to click your icon as opposed to other ones. Okay, so my suggestion here would be users are your best designer. Leave egos aside. If you're the CEO, whatever you think might not be right, even your designer might not be right. Do the tests and let users guide you in terms of what the icon should look like. Okay, let's move on to the name, and the name also has a very, very high impact in terms of App Store rankings. And this dinosaur here actually shows the theory of the long tail. I'm sure you're well aware of the theory of the long tail. And so the theory of the long tail says that you know, the more people usually search for a limited amount of words that are rather generic, and those drive a lot of traffic. But then more specific keywords drive less traffic, but tend to convert a lot better. So this is what we did with our title. As opposed to simply having Guide Central, we added like a short description of what the app does or what you can find in the app. So we added that phrase there: DIY projects, craft tutorials, and how-to ideas. All those words would be within, you know, sort of the head of the dinosaur, right? Those are generic keywords that have a lot of traffic. And the strategy we're following here is adding those generic keywords to the title of the name of the app. And this has been working very, very well. This is the reason why we had that sort of first step change in downloads. And yeah, in recent updates, some other players out there also discovered that those words made sense. So as you can see there, other players have been following in terms of what to put there in the title. So my recommendation there would be do your homework before other people do it. And here you can see the evolution of our rankings for the word how-to, which was one of the ones on in the app title. All those spikes there are tests that we did, sort of adding and removing the words from the title. As soon as we removed the word from the title, the rankings, we went down in the rankings dramatically, and the opposite works as well. And now we've had that word in the title since August, and as you can see, it's been improving. and apparently we're the number one app for how-to at the moment. So my recommendation for the name is follow the dinosaur, and more specifically focus in high volume keywords, sort of the first part of the long tail theory. Okay, keywords. Keywords, some people may argue they are really important. They are certainly less important than the ones you put in the title, so I put them as medium. What you should know about keywords is that you have 100 characters. You should use all 100 characters, leaving no spaces, using only commas in between to save some space, and avoid duplication. By this I mean don't use the same keywords in your keywords than in the title. They both, the App Store looks at all of them. So it's a good chance to increase the number of keywords that you use. I use this tool, Sensor Tower. It's a really, really good tool to do your homework around keywords. What you can see there is some of the terms that we use, and they tell you what the traffic is and what the iPhone difficulty is and how many apps are out there and what's your current ranking. So I keep a spreadsheet where I do this sort of analysis all the time. Throughout my 17 updates, I've been using this spreadsheet to understand what to do. So you can pull the difference between traffic and competition, and you can sort and look for the biggest gaps, right? And usually the biggest gaps means opportunity, but you can also sort them by ranking. So how are you ranking for those specific keywords? And you can play around with all these things. I usually prefer to use ranking because I always want to see my app within the first ones. So even though other keywords might give me bigger gaps, I'd rather be in the top of the results. So that's kind of the scenario that I'm looking for. So the recommendation here is do your homework, use tools like Sensor Tower. It will take you some time to really understand which ones work, which ones don't, but there's tools out there to help you throughout the process. Okay, the description. The description of the app is not so important, at least for us. I think the key thing there is to show value. You have to show explain the users very quickly what your app does and why your app is unique. My suggestion there would be to use especially the first 3 lines wisely and include a call to action. So this is our description there. As you can see, the first 3 lines are critical because then there's like a more button there. So unless users expand it, they won't read it. So the first 3 lines there are critical, and I always include a call to action at the very end, because call to actions are important and they drive behavior. When you hit more, then now we have an additional phrase there: for a better experience, please register with Facebook or Twitter, optional, and accept push notifications, optional. So here's another call to action. I want users to download the app, but also to register and to accept push notifications so I can engage with them moving forward. We've had descriptions that were a lot longer, like would include all the blogs that we were featured on. We would include like a list of features and so on and so forth. I have no significant evidence that those descriptions work better than this one, so I'd rather keep it sweet and simple now and with clear call to actions. But test your unique selling points and explain very briefly why you're different. Screenshots. Screenshots, I put them down as medium. Some people will say are very, very important. From our experience, they make a difference, but not huge. I don't really know whether it's better to use real screenshots or curated screenshots. We have had both, and I have mixed feelings. But kind of the trend right now is towards curated screenshots. If you look at games, most of them will have curated screenshots. If you look at social networking apps, Facebook, Twitter, Path, they tend to have real screenshots. So you have to understand your space and understand what's better for you. Either way, I mean, or even if you use curated screenshots, explain what your app does. And even if they're not curated, use the proper, the screens that explain what your app does. Use all 5 screenshots. Apparently now there's been one app who's already using video. Seems to be like a test by Apple, but I can see that potentially being rolled out to more people. showcase your best views or your best content, and include a clear call to action. So these are our first 3 screenshots. We are using curated screenshots in this case, and just so that you understand the level of detail that we put into this, every single picture there has been put there for a reason. These are not real views from the app, but for instance, that view there with all the cupcakes have been put there because they are very effective. And I put the cupcakes in a specific order because I know how popular every single cupcake has been in the last few months. So that's the level of detail that I pay, the level of detail that I look into when I do these kind of things. And those are the last 2. And as you can see, the last one has a clear call to action. So if you think of in terms of how the people browse the App Store, I want them to see the last screenshot, and the next thing they do is download the app. And so that's why we included that call to action there. So your screenshots should actually deliver your elevator pitch. Okay. Reviews. Reviews are very, very important. They're becoming more and more important. There's a lot of versions saying that all app stores are actually geared towards reviews a lot more, so kind of the social recognition, community feedback, and so on is becoming more and more important. So embrace reviews, even if they're negative. Now, if they're negative, there's tools that you can use to filter them, but they're still good because you can learn a lot and you can react to those reviews. And here's an ask for everyone, please don't be evil. Those are our reviews there. Out of the 5 one-star reviews that we have, 3 of them come from our competitors. It's simply unacceptable and unbelievable. We are all putting a lot of hard work into this. So there's no point in putting other people a 1-star review if they don't deserve it. I've rated 5 stars to some of our competitors who have done an outstanding job. So please only use a 1-star review if it's really a 1-star application. Apptentive is a really good tool for filtering negative reviews. What they do is essentially they ask you if you love the app or not. If you love the app, you can rate the app. If you don't love the app, then you can send an email with feedback. And so you make sure you filter out all the people who aren't 100% happy with your app. And AppPurify put together a very nice blog post, I think, or a white paper with significant evidence of why better ratings mean more momentum, and also how ratings can affect rankings. So you can go search for that AppPurify study and have a read because it's really interesting. So the key takeaway here is let others do the talking, embrace reviews, and let the community work to your advantage. A few other factors that I consider are low priority, but still important, is the frequency with which you update your apps. You now have to take in consideration that with iOS 7, there's auto-updating, okay? So you can fix bugs and all that kind of things easily, but at the same time, it seems like they are starting to pay more attention to the ratings for the most recent version of the app. So at the same time, don't push too many updates because then you won't have enough time to get a lot of positive reviews, and that has an impact. Developer name is also taken in consideration as a keyword. Bear in mind the iOS compatibility. If you only develop for iOS 7, then people with iOS 6 won't be able to download the app, and therefore you will lose out, which has an impact in the rankings as well. Try to keep your binary file below 100 megabytes, which is the maximum allowed for 3G. And pick your App Store category well. And here's an interesting chart there with the numbers that you need to hit the top of the App Stores for different categories. So if your app could fit in 2 or 3 different categories, look at these numbers and look which categories have the least amount of competition, because that means that with the same number of downloads, you can make it higher up the charts. So pay attention to detail. And finally, it's great to maximize downloads, but that's not the end goal. Apps are all about engagement. So build a great app, and everything else will follow, okay? downloads are only the first part, and there will be a lot of talks about engagement later today. And here's a clear example. We launched the new version of the app maybe 20 days ago with a new logo and a huge kind of redesign. And even though we've been growing consistently and steadily throughout the year, this new version of the app, it's a much, much better app. Is driving a lot more engagement, and you see how the trend there is going up. So the most important thing is to build a great app, and everything else will follow. So if you like this presentation, please scan this code, download the app, and give us a 5-star review. That's the way you can pay me back. Thank you.